How's it going?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, perfectly well. Yeah, loud and clear. So you're here with us in the main room and take it away whenever you're ready, Laura.
Fantastic. I'm just going to start my timer so that I know what 15 minutes looks like because I'm notoriously loquacious. So I'll just keep it brief. Firstly, I just want to say thank you very much to AHEAD for facilitating us in a hybrid fashion. And because, as you can see, I'm in a dressing room right now as I'm loading in a show into Anton Arts Centre in Dundalk. So if a nervous actor bursts through that door at any minute looking for their director, you'll have to excuse us. So I'm presenting today on universal design in actor training. A bit niche, a few people have said to me, but I think it has applications across as sort of like a case study, and that's the perspective I'm going to get across. Um, so maintaining system integrity while expanding access is the sort of subtitle. So sure, look, we'll launch into it, or will we? Can you see that? Is that working? I think you can. No one's saying no. Okay, so firstly, I'm going to address the challenges in working with a system of actor training and any system that's kind of considered fixed or closed or sort of so entrenched or foundational that people feel they can't make changes or accommodations to it, or that doing so might change the integrity of the system. So much of actor training systems are developed by practitioners and they have become recognized strategies for actor training. So most people who train as an actor will have a couple of different systems that they've learned and they'll be on the syllabuses of the actor training institute that they've gone to. These are widely used systems, provide a common language and a shared toolkit for practitioners who work and collaborate in professional settings. So not only is it just how we teach them in the classroom, but then when they go into a professional setting, they might end up with a director who likes to use a certain style or a certain language. So now they have this shared language, this shared toolkit from their peers and from their directors. So it's important that our students, our student actors, have access to these systems and the full system, as it were. So yeah, as I said, they bring a level of credibility to the student to say that I'm Stanislavski trained or I'm Chekhov trained or Meisner, Strasberg, whatever systems that they have engaged with. It's important for them to be able to say, I have that system under my belt. And it's important that the accommodations that are sometimes offered aren't seen as leaving the student with an incomplete system if they've left out sections due to an accommodation, say. So this can be where people get a little bit challenged, I suppose, when they say, well, I can't offer an accommodation there. This is integral to the system. I cannot, bypass this for that student X, Y, and Z. So what do we do? So this seems very niche, as I said. I'm sure some of you are going, what does this have to do with me? But I suppose I assume, and I talk to a lot of my fellow academics who work in vastly different fields than me. I'm in the Department of Informatics and Creative Media, and we have everything from theatre, musical theatre, creative media, all the way to computer science and music production. So we're a very broad department, and there are a lot of systems or approaches that feel entrenched or embedded. And I imagine you have some of your own that are springing to mind. So this is just a way of adopting UD or universal design as an attitude that I've sort of taken to. Instead of trying to interject accommodations that have made the systems go from unchangeable systems or methods into something much more open and approachable. So that's my challenge here today. I've already talked for 4 minutes. So really, can I do this in 11 minutes? Can I apply universal design guidelines and principles across all the commonly used actor training systems in all of the actor training institutes in Ireland? Can I do that in 11 minutes? No, but I'm not going to try. What I can do is I can look at how adopting UD guidelines as an attitude can transform how we apply seemingly unyielding systems and how we measure the successes of our students within them. And this is something I'm really, really interested in. It's looking at the word success or, box ticking. Have they achieved that learning outcome? Have they achieved that on the rubric? Were they successful in what we asked them to do? And looking at what success is in these systems. And I can suggest that these guidelines can help us reframe what we think about as success in order to make it more accessible. One second, so I can see. Can't read my own slides. Which is my fault, not theirs. They were accessibility checked. So that's just my own silliness. Okay, I'll move my face over here. So for simplicity and time, we are going to stick with just the one system. Thank God, says he, because you can't learn them all in 15 minutes. So the Stanislavski system is what we're going to look at today, and that is a system based on a series of exercises which aims to provide actors with a toolkit at the end of their training process. And the output of that is traditionally with Stanislavski method to kind of come up with what we would call a truthful or a realistic performance of the role. Now, hold those words in your head: truthful, realistic. They come back later on and they're important. The system was created towards the end of the 19th century, and the style of theatre was moving towards realism or naturalism. That was adopted through Europe and North America, and it remains the dominant style of acting today. Many of you, I'm sure, will have just watched the Oscars and cried tears of joy at Jessie Buckley doing us proud, and she gave a very truthful, realistic performance in Hamlet, which won her the Oscar, which, again, wonderful news for us. However, what is truth and what is real? She asks a very big question there. The good news is that Universal Design and Stanislavski have some things in common. Hurrah, says everybody. You were hoping they would. So there is no such thing as a typical or average student. This is a quote from ahead. All students learn differently, and to successfully teach for all students, we have to introduce greater flexibility in teaching practice. Wise words. And funnily enough, in the 1800s, Stanislavski said something similar. Create your own method. Don't depend slavishly on mine. Make something that will work for you and keep breaking traditions, I beg you. So fantastic. We have permission from the man himself to start breaking some traditions. However, if the aim of training is to create a truthful performance, can the students be penalized when what they create doesn't look legibly naturalistic in performance? So if I say to somebody, create, like I want them to be show me grief or anger or something like that, and I deem that not realistic, not naturalistic, not an everyday construction of grief. If the student is basing it on their own experience and their own practice and their own, experience of grief, can they really be penalized if what we are seeing is not what we think is legible? It's user error, or is a system that defaults to naturalism through a neuronormative lens as an ideal? We're sort of trained to think that there is one way of looking one way, and that's the beautiful way that a lot of people win Oscars for, or that we see in, my production of Dancing with Luna. So you'll probably see, oh yeah, I recognize that as one thing. But when we're training students and we're asking if they succeed or not, well, are we not asking them to filter it through their own lens of their own experience? So can we change what we look at as success to make it broader, so that the student can achieve it in a way that is natural or real for them? So what is success? We'll find out how much time I have left and whether I can tell you or not. I can't abandon the method, but I can adopt a different mindset in the creation of my metrics, and I can adopt a different attitude towards what I deem as successful. So quickly together, let's apply the UD guidelines to reshape our attitude. So I've just taken some of the guidelines and some of the, the SIR titles, and I've talked about how that applies to this idea. So guideline 1 is to design options for perception. So it represents a diversity of perspectives and identities in authentic ways. So how does this apply to a closed system? I'm challenging the idea that every role in, a theatre defaults to a neurotypical, straight, non-disabled, white, all of these ideas of the norm, the canon, and challenge myself to go, well, not every role defaults that, and it might look different. So challenging those internal biases, and not only that, but opening up opportunities for different identities and different authentic ways of expressing themselves in these roles. The second guideline, design options for language and symbol. This one is really, really important to me, which is to challenge the type of language that we use in our marking and our assessments. So when I'm building a marking assessment, I'm using words like truthful, realistic, natural. So I have to go, well, what does truthful mean? What does realistic mean? What does natural mean? And in what context? And really poke myself and open myself up when I'm writing down those words in marking and assessments, to make sure that when I'm grading a student, I'm setting them up for failure. That's what is their version of those things. Design options for building knowledge, guideline 3. Cultivate multiple ways of knowing and making meaning. And that how that applies is to acknowledge that there is more than one way for a student to understand a method and to end an exercise and to make contributions to the work. There's not just one way of doing a thing. All of our minds and our bodies are different, and what might look unnatural, uncomfortable, or not innate or counterintuitive to me might be the most natural, most in tune way for a student to experience something. So it's making room, not even making room, but like the guideline says, cultivating space for different ways of knowing and making. Guideline 4 is designing options for interaction. Vary and honor the methods for response, navigation, and movement. So this is allowing students, or for me, it's allowing students to deviate from the expected and to see if I can follow instead of lead. So very often in this work, students will bring new and unexpected things into the room. And there's in these systems, sometimes you can go, no, that's not the way it's meant to look, or that's not the way it's meant to feel. And just stepping back and allowing students to, have a different response, navigate the exercise differently, for their movement to look different in the moment, and holding, not to sound corny, but holding space for that. And I like the word honor that, vary and honor the methods. To follow the lead rather than always interrupt and stop and put people back on a track. Design options for expression and communication. Address biases related to modes of expression. So ask yourself, is how they are expressing or communicating not realistic, legible, truthful, or is it simply not what we expected? So sort of mirroring the other one, but constantly asking yourself, is there a bias at play here? Is there a way I can be more open to somebody else's experience? Design options for strategy development, challenge exclusionary practices. This one, ask yourself, is stillness is required to find focus, is a very common exercise where we get people to be very, very still, close their eyes, lie in darkness. And early in my practice, I discovered that stillness is not the most comfortable way for some people to find focus. Some people need to move to be focused. Even though the method says lie still in a prone position, actually the aim of that exercise is to give the actors focus. So there is no need for me to, force the exercise if it is going to create the wrong outcome for the student. Similarly, is quiet required to find peace or be peaceful? So if somebody is stimming verbally or making noises in their movement, that might be perfectly peaceful to them, and there might be a solution for everybody in the room to come to some sort of balance. It might take a little extra time to find out what that balance is in the ensemble, but we can get there if we spend that moment working on it rather than just demanding one way of being. I've got 2 minutes left. I'm on time, guys. Design options for welcoming interests and identities. Nurture joy and play. This is at the center of my work. I put on plays. The clue is in the word. It's playful. We're playing. So how it applies, I try to keep this at the center of the work. There's an old attitude to the kind of work that we're making, and to a lot of systems, that the work must be unpleasant in order for it to be meaningful. But I invite people to ask, what if this was easy? What if this was joyful? What if it didn't have to be unpleasant for us to find meaning in it, or for us to suffer to prove that we have worked hard enough to achieve? There are ways to find pleasant ways around all of these things. Maybe that's a bit optimistic, but I find if you keep it at the center of the work, that is usually what happens. Design options for sustaining effort and persistence. Don't assume what is sensible to you is sensible to other people. This is the same with the Stanislavski method, but any method. If you read it with, one person with one brain will read it, go, of course, this is intuitive, this makes perfect sense, but it just might not to somebody else. And just because somebody said it a very long time ago and it has sustained, doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be reinterpreted or re-explained, or that time doesn't need to be given to break it down. And that if that time needs to be given, that doesn't make the person troublesome or behind or in any way. There is time, there is always time to explain, there is always time to break it down, and not everybody needs to understand everything the same way, and it's not a deficit of the person or the system. And number 9, which is design options for emotional capacity. Cultivate empathy and restorative practices, and this is something as well, kind of relates to the others. I have 12 seconds left. Assume good faith and allow for rest. So assume that everyone's walking into the room in good faith. No one is trying to be disruptive. No one is trying to break an old system that's important to you or your practice. That says be quiet, Laura, but I'm going to steal an extra 10 seconds to have a great ending. Assume good faith, assume that everybody wants to be there and wants to work. If we start with that attitude that people aren't trying to break the system or trying to be disruptive or non-cooperative, and allow time for rest. Again, with systems like this, there is this kind of work hard, sweat, blood and tears, and that's what gets the amazing result. That's what gets the Oscar, not necessarily, there is time for rest, there is time for reflection and restorative practice. So I'll end with that we allow for rest and assume good faith, and keep that at the center of our practice. So I hope that was interesting, and I hope that maybe you can apply it to your own systems that are embedded or ingrained, or maybe it's just very niche and you've got a little insight into what one woman is doing up in Dundalk, which is always interesting. So thank you. And thank you very much to AHEAD again for this. It's a fantastic organization and I depend on you an awful lot in my work, and I visit your website very often. So thank you.